All right, looks like we are live. We got a couple people there in the chat on the side. If you want a shout out, I would love to give it to you. Just turn off the phone here. Just say what's up in the chat, and I will give you a shout out. And I'm going to wait till we got about 10 at least viewers before we get started. So I want to say thanks right away to Elle once again for doing the moderation in the chat. And since Jay is here, what's up, Jay Handley? You're Jay handling it, my brother. I'm actually just going to take this time while we're kind of warming up and letting people show up to give some shout outs. So I'm super, super, super excited to have this new intro for the channel, which is going to premiere with a video that I'm dropping on the 28th. So in 2 days. There's a new intro to the show, and it is fire. Actually, when I showed it to Elle, Elle does executive assistant stuff for me, and it's just an amazing, amazing woman. She was like, she sent the exploding head emoji followed by a prime Ric Flair going, woo! And so that's when I knew that I had knocked it out of the park. But it was really, oh, hey, and there's Krista. Much love to Krista. So this exact thing that I'm talking about, the three people who made it, who brought my vision into reality, like almost better than I could have hoped for, were Brent War is the maestro who did all the mixing and came up with the general musical. And then the lovely and incredibly talented Krista Herring. You've got to check out her work. She's just an absolute powerhouse. She did the vocals on it. And then Clint, Woodsman of the East, Coralie did all the visuals for it, and it's really fire. It's just 23 seconds, but this is what people who aren't like content creators don't really understand, is just how much work goes into what seems like really simple things. Like there was a tremendous amount of coordination and work over the course of months, and Krista's vocals just really took it to like a completely different level. Just amazing work. And Clint Corley's visuals are just, they're fire. And Brent War with the maestro vision on how the music, and he and I worked very closely over a long period of time. We had a lot of hiccups, and eventually getting our vocal talent in Krista to come on board. So yeah, you're super welcome, Krista. Thank you. It was my pleasure, I assure you. And so I'm just going to give a shout out to some patrons, and then we'll get into it. So members for the channel, we got Dorita Rose. Thank you so much. You are fantastic. David M. Taylor has been one of the longest fans and supporters of the channel. Dorita Rose has actually been supporting the channel for quite a while as well. So thank you to both of you for being YouTube members. And then all my folks on Patreon, Private Hudson, aka Juan Guaido. He's one of my newest patrons. Thank you so much. Christopher B. McCartney is a patron, it seems. And then Anna Rhodes, who is amazing. She's one of my angelic magic students. Amazing woman. Shout out to you, Tracy C. Rest in peace, Sarambe. Sean Michael Gordon. Daniel Smith. And yeah, those are there's a bunch of other people who supported a while back. Oh, here's another one. Dan Whippy is still a supporter through Patreon. Thank you so much, Dan. Dan has been one of the longest running supporters of the channel, and it really helps because I spend quite a bit of my time working on content for this channel, and so it's nice those people who are able and willing to give back. So I'm just going to do some shout outs before we jump into things from the chat. So Waken and Heal, hey, how's it going? Living Free, woo! I made it early. I assume that was a woo! Ric Flair style, right? Just to get in the groove of the channel. So got Alex here saying greetings. Good to see you as always, brother. Brent, I'm not sure if you heard the extended shout out or if you were a little late to miss that, but I give you a big shout out, brother. I'll just say again, Brent, thank you so much for being the maestro for the new intro, which will be dropping on the 28th. What's up, P. Scott? I love that. I don't think that's called that isn't the Triskelion. It's I forget what that triple Celtic knot is, but I love it. I actually have I guess I don't. Oh yeah, I do have it. It would be too hard to see, but I actually have those on my on my magic Vedic ring here. And then, hey, Anna Rhodes, how's it going? I was just giving you a shout out. So awesome. All right. Well, we got about 20 people in here, so we're just going to launch into things. So, man, it's hard to even keep up. I was out of town and had to take care of some things. And yeah, Jay, dude, the new intro is fire. So if you have questions for the second half, because I'm going to kind of stop interacting with the chat now, go ahead and put it, maybe if you can put it in bold, that way L can collect, or I mean in caps, all caps, like you're a boomer who doesn't know they have caps stuck. If you can, and no offense to any boomers watching, but that is kind of a classic boomer move. Put it in all caps so that way L can easily find them, and then I'll answer in the second half. So yeah, the Shadow War is it's really going nuts at this point, and it would be a little hard to overstate just how nutty things have gotten. I guess I'll talk about the most like on point topic of the moment is probably Puff Daddy. Oh, Puffy. Oh, how the mighty have fallen, how the scumbag pedo elite are starting to get pinched one by one by the Luciferians, and they're going after Diddy. People think that the other Malachians are giving him up and stuff, but does that really make any sense right before an election to draw attention to the fact that your side is a bunch of pedos? Doesn't really make any sense, does it? But does it make sense that the Luciferians might be pinching Puff Daddy because A, it gets black people in particular thinking about it, and black people, I promise you, are going to go to Trump. Maybe even Trump may even just split the black vote right down the middle, and stretch goal might win the black vote. That hasn't happened for a Republican since whoever was before Lyndon Johnson, when the last major political realignment flip-flop happened. So Puff Daddy getting pinched right now during the warm-up to the election, and who knows who he's going to squeak and scream and going to finger as he's pinched, right? And you'll notice Kanye, who is friends with Trump, he called out Diddy like a year ago for this exact stuff. And here he is all of a sudden in an election year with 6 months to go, 8 months to go. Suddenly Puff Daddy is getting picked up for trafficking, or they're trying to. They raided his house. They found tunnels, I guess. Boy, these people sure like tunnels, don't they? Right? That's still an emerging thing. He supposedly went to the Caribbean, which is obviously where Epstein's Island is and all that stuff. Very interesting, and I think is a sign of this increasing pinch pressure points that the Lucies, as we like to call them, recently some folks in my angelic magic class, we have a group chat that we do, and I am going to have a forum with a group chat that I'll open up to the public, but right now I have kind of a smaller one for current and former angelic magic students. And we were joking, for a while we've been referring to the Luciferians as Lucies, and so then we completed the trifecta. We got Luciferians are Lucies, Malachians are Mollies, and then this is the one that I really like the best. Most high consciousness people are Mosties, right? Kind of like Swifties, but Mosties, so the opposite. I really like that. So the Lucies are really pinching the Malachians in a big way right now. And Puff Daddy being targeted has got to send shivers right down the spine of all the Hollywood people and all the people who are, involved in the music industry, right? That's got to send shivers right down their spine. I wouldn't want to be, I wouldn't want to be ever, but you got to imagine that, I'm going to rephrase because I didn't want to say that, but you got to imagine people like Lil Nas X, right? Who's 100% balls deep in this Malachian current, right? People like perhaps Katy Perry, people like even Miss Swiftie herself would probably be further up the food chain and grab because of her lineage, which I've referred to on another show, and it got the channel nuked. It's the one time the channel's gotten in trouble is when I revealed who Miss Swiftie's true family is. And I will tell you, it is not, it's not Anton LaVey. It's so much worse than that. It's an actually important Malachian family, not some sort of fake frontman for the Church of Satan, but actual real deal old school Malachians. And I'm just going to leave it at that because last time I actually said the name, the channel got nuked. So I'm not going to do that again. But yeah, music industry people are, I bet, going to suddenly flip to Trump here pretty soon. Many of them already have. The smart ones, the ones who kind of like can see which way the wind's blowing, have already switched to backing Trump. But I think you're going to see a lot more of that. And I think you're going to see a lot more of Hollywood people getting pinched and like probably turning over. And you're going to see a lot of weird stuff. You're going to see a lot of weird stuff. And what I mean is, you know, Trump, I talked about this in the last live stream, Trump won't touch his third rail, which is that he keeps going, oh, Operation Warp Speed is great. Oh, I love this. I love these things. They're so wonderful. And soon they'll have them. Weirdly, he said they'll have them to get rid of cancer. That's interesting. And is a good segue into what I'm about to go into. But he won't touch that third rail the same way Elon Musk won't talk negatively about the brain chip or the electric vehicle thing. And it's going to be really, really hard to tell who's on what side over the next few months. Pascal Najati's Telegram, like, man, if you haven't been paying attention to that, it is nutty. And so speaking of cancer, how bizarre is it that both King Charles and now Princess, gosh, what is her name? I want to say it's Kate, but I keep calling her Kate Winslet, which isn't right. I think it's Princess Kate. So William's wife, right? She's gone missing. And then there's been weird, like clear AI like video where she's wearing the Epstein striped blue and white striped like shirt has appeared with 96% match that it's AI, right? She gets cancer too. And then the Knights of the Royal Garter, they went walking about 2 weeks ago now. They went through on horseback through the middle of London. And they're a very formal group that's there to do very specific kind of royal signaling. And they had an empty boot and a black flag. And that usually means, not always, it has a number of meanings, but one of the meanings is that a royal has died. So you got three mega names, right? Not even talking about Puff Daddy. I'm talking about several tiers above them. You have the princess, you have King Charles, right? Both of them kind of going missing. Like, where are they? As far as I know, neither one of them have been seen. William's around, but you don't see those two. And then Jacob Rothschild died. Now, it could be a couple of things going on. It could be that the Lucys have pinched them, right? That they've for some reason brought them in. I would imagine the case of Kate, they brought her into some kind of witness protection thing, right? So she can turn over, spill all the beans and all this stuff she knows. Charles might be a little different, though. Another possibility is that if they're not being arrested and or brought into protective custody, another possibility is that they're going to have both of them die and then use it to give William more support and more bring him forward as the new leader and head of the NWO king. That would be if the Mollies are running what's happening. Another thing the Mollies might be doing is the Malachians, they know that their time is short. They're starting to get into panic mode. It's pretty clear everywhere. And one thing is that Malachians, right, whether it's the Aztecs or whether it's, the Venetians, they know that human sacrifice is very powerful magically. But there's nothing more powerful than a true sacrifice, right? Like, think about it. When someone says, oh, you got to make sacrifices, they don't mean like you just throw away a piece of paper you don't care about. They mean you have to give up something you really want in order to get something else you really want. It also means to make sacred, right? But sacrifice here, I'm using it in the terms of a Malachian sacrifice. The sacrifice that has by far the most potent magical power, and it's the one that the Aztecs used in ancient times to jump into power. In fact, I'm just going to tell that story real quick. So the Aztecs were basically like the Blackwater or mercenary group of Mexico back, before they rose to power. And so they had this very powerful dark shaman who was getting messages, no doubt, from Moloch in the lower astral. And he said, I have a plan for us to become the most powerful group in Mexico, but you have to follow it exactly. So he convinced the war leader of the Aztecs at the time that he had a vision of how they could become the dominant power in Mexico. So he said, the first thing we need to do is we need to marry into a royal bloodline that goes back to the Olmecs. So back then, there was many different groups in Mexico that were relatively peaceful. They certainly fought, but compared to the Aztecs, they were relatively not brutal. They fought, right? Like it's a Kali Yuga. Of course, they fought and killed each other, but it was more like sort of the way the feudal wars would often have an element of honor to them, and you didn't wipe out your opponent, and you didn't do scorched earth, like salting the earth and burning the bridges, right? Like you'd have a fight and one side would dominate the other, and then that side would be generous in victory, right? So the Aztecs would turn that all on its head because they marry into this Olmec line. They say, we're going to marry our leader into the line, and they found a very weak sort of king who was very weak, and their power had been flagging. And he thought, well, if I marry my daughter into the Aztecs, they're very vibrant, they're very powerful, and that would give me the greatest military force here in Mexico. Let's do it. I'm willing to marry my daughter into your family. So the whole group is there, including like royals from other parts of Mexico who had bloodlines that went back to the Olmecs, and they all came together for this wedding. And the princess was back behind the scenes, and they were waiting for her and the Aztec guy to come out and get married. And instead what happened is the black sorcerer shaman came out wearing the skin of the princess. And this, of course, shocked and horrified everyone. And he said, I hereby declare we are now taking on royalty for ourselves. Wrapped in her skin like fucking Buffalo Bill style, right? Pretty fucking intense. Well, of course, the royals freak out, and the Aztecs have to book it out of there. And the shaman was protected by an elite Aztec guard, and they got out of there. And the royals were like, we've got to wipe these people out. They're insane. They're completely evil. We've got to wipe them out. And they chased them. And so the Aztecs like turned to the shaman. They're like, hey, evil dark sorcerer, like what the fuck? And he goes, no, this is part of the plan. I'll know exactly when we should stop. And so they were getting chased and chased and chased, and the Aztecs eventually fled into the swamp. They fled into the swamp, and there in the middle of the swamp, there was a fairly large island that had a cactus on it. And on that cactus, there was an eagle. There was a bald eagle that was eating a rattlesnake. And the shaman said, this is the sign, this is where we'll build. And because it was in the middle of a swamp, basically the royals had killed, the like reasonable royals had killed a bunch of the Aztecs as the Aztecs beat a hasty retreat because they brought everyone they could to like wipe them out because of this abomination. They were like, good, we chased you into the swamp, that'll teach you. They made the exact same mistake that the Celts made when they sacked Rome. The Celts from the Iberian Peninsula, when they sacked Rome, they didn't wipe out the Romans. Oopsies. Might live to regret that, and might end up getting completely genocided on for not wiping out the Romans, dumbass. And so the Olmec descended tribes in Mexico, they didn't wipe out the Aztecs. They just drove them in the swamp, and they didn't really want to try and go into the swamp because they knew that would be dangerous. And so the Aztecs set up shop there, and that's where Mexico City is now. Mexico City is basically on a drained swamp that the Aztecs built on. And it's interesting too, because there's symbolism of Enlil being the eagle and the god of war, and Enki being the serpent, or the god of spiritual knowledge, right? And I believe that Enlil is Moloch and Enki is Lucifer, right? And that it was a place where Moloch was dominant over Lucifer. It was basically the sign that they saw there. The thing that made that ritual so powerful, and it vaulted the Aztecs to power, is they sacrificed true royal blood. So Kate wouldn't be super good for that because she's married into the family. Gosh, I hope her name's Kate. I think so. But Charles would be. Charles would be great for that. A killing of the king ritual. And that may very well be what happened. And that would supercharge the Malachians for this one last push they're going to have this year, especially when Pluto retrogrades out of Aquarius back into Capricorn, which happens a couple of months before the election, and it lasts till like 5 days after the election in the United States. So yeah, it's very curious as to where the royals went and what the hell's going on there, and why they're doing AI that shows Kate wearing Epstein blue and white stripes. Kate also wore an exact replica of Rosemary from Rosemary's Baby outfit when she first brought her baby out. And so a lot of people say that baby could be the Antichrist. I think that baby's too young to be the Antichrist. For me, the Antichrist is like a teenager, early 20s, mid 20s perhaps right now. And I just don't think we've seen them yet. For a while, I was toying with Mohammed bin Salman, but I just think he's too young, too old rather, because he's around 40. He's like 38. That's just a little too old to hit like some of the right astrological notes. It would need to be someone that was probably born in the early part of the century. And so probably someone who's a teenager or in the early 20s, and almost certainly they were born on the Arabian Peninsula, because they almost certainly have a bloodline that goes back into David's line, right? The same line that Yeshua comes from. So that's the royals. Something very, very, very odd is going on there, to put it very mildly. And so, yeah, now I want to switch gears and talk about this Russia 322 attack. So tip of the hat here to UI Guy 71, aka Alex. He pointed out that, and it's funny because sometimes numerology math doesn't quite make sense to me, but before that day, he was talking about how that's the only 33 day of the year. I don't understand it, because normally you add up all the numerals, and the only way 33 works is if you go 3 plus 22 equals 25 plus 2 equals 27 plus another 2 equals 29 plus 4 equals 33. So you have to add the 22 from the date as a 22, and it seems like normally it doesn't work that way. I'm sure Alex will put his librarian spectacles on and inform me of why that is and where I'm ignorant on that, because Alex has a wealth of knowledge about numerology. I'm just teasing him because I've got some details wrong before. He's kind of my numerology guru. But he pointed out that it's a 33 day, and it's the only 33 day of the year, so it's extra potent from a magical perspective. And the Malachians tried to do a really big ritual and basically false flag there, right? Where they even invoke the goddess energy, and by claiming that it was ISIL did it. I'm not going to say ISIS because I don't like I don't like to blemish that goddess, which I'll use her name now, Isis, by connecting her to this evil terrorist cult where they're trying to really invert her meaning completely into evil. And so I don't like that. So I call them ISIL, but the Islamic State. And I just am going to use that here. So you have this massive terrorist attack on Friday in Russia. And I don't know about you guys, but I had a tremendous chaos in my personal life that day. It was not a good day at all. And I could feel the chaos and the nastiness of the Malachians. But once again, like the most restrained human being on earth, Vladimir Putin doesn't super respond. That guy, the only way that what Putin is doing makes any sense to me whatsoever is that he has some kind of agreement with Trump that was based on that meeting where they spoke alone and they didn't have any translators. That freaked out the liberal media, and it freaked out everyone, and people are like, oh my God, this is proof of the evil, blah, blah, blah. He must have some kind of agreement, and either, some people claim that Trump turned him and against Putin's will. I don't buy that. I think Trump and Putin are both Luciferian, possibly even directly in contact with Lucifer levels of Luciferian, and that they're just willing to play their roles within this saga. I don't buy that Trump somehow bent Putin to his will. I don't see Putin as particularly bendable to anyone's will, except for a deity. Putin, like doing whatever Lucifer wanted, that I could see. Putin doing what another human wanted, that's a tough sell for me. I don't think so. So the only way that Putin's complete insane restraint over the past year or so, despite constant relentless provocations, makes any sense to me is he must be aware that there's a greater plan going on, and that if he just continues to not react, that it will work out in his favor. And what he mustn't do is react with, something insane, because he certainly would have had all the right in the world to do it. Because how ridiculous is it that all of a sudden ISIL comes out of its cryogenic freeze of a decade, right? And all of a sudden now they attack Russia. Oh yeah, we're definitely buying that. That was not in any way the hidden hand of Western intelligence. Get the fuck out of here. Obviously that was Western intelligence that did that. In fact, I corrected Aaron Mate, who I normally love. That's Gabor Mate's son, and he does like a lot of geopolitical work, and he like did great coverage of Russiagate. He like gave a fig leaf of credibility to that ISIL is somehow an actual terrorist organization instead of an obvious intelligence cutout. And I actually kind of went after him on Twitter because I was so astonished that he wasn't calling that out. I mean, he kind of hinted at, but he just didn't say it in a clear enough way. And some people called him on it, and I joined in with the "what are you doing, Aaron?" kind of thing, because I normally love that man's work. And maybe he clarified later. I haven't been on Twitter since then, but there's no way that was like a random terrorist group attacking Russia. That's obviously Western intelligence attacking Russia there. That's the only way that they get that level of penetration and coordination in Russia. So yeah, that was a huge event, and Russia didn't respond. It was also on 3/22, which is Skull and Bones Day, right? Because that's the charter number for that particular lodge. So that also is interesting from a symbolic point of view. So now, yesterday, we had the lunar eclipse. So we are now in what's called the mouth of the dragon. We are in a place between the lunar and solar eclipse, which is coming up on the 8th and is going to be mega and massive for the United States. Absolutely huge. There's lots of people. I don't think it's necessarily going to result in a big event on the day of the eclipse. I could see there being big events between now and the solar eclipse, but I don't think that it will be like on the day of the eclipse something major happens. It could be. It could be. I just am thinking that it's going to be a little bit more muted than people think, and I think the real fireworks are going to happen actually later, probably near Passover. So you may or may not be aware, and I've been aware of this for a while, and I'm kind of shocked that all of a sudden it's getting mainstream media coverage, but one of the things that Hamas cited, or not Hamas, oh yeah, Hamas, one of the things, is that right? Yeah, it's Hezbollah's Lebanon. Yeah, so one of the things Hamas cited for their, again, obviously not who they pretend to be, for their attack in back on October 7th was the presence of the Red Heifers that were brought in. So in order to build the third temple, there has to be a sacrifice of perfect, flawless red heifers to where every single hair on these red heifers has to be red. One black hair, one white hair, it's disqualified. So they found in Texas, right over the site of the eclipse, right? that last year's penumbral eclipse, and then this year's full total solar eclipse, they found, I think, 5 perfect red heifers, which are actually red Angus cows, and some lunatic, dumb fuck, asshole, traitor to humanity, idiot, Christian messianic moron in Texas decided to sell these to and bring it to the attention of the Israelis. And so they found that they met the specifications that are in their prophecies to rebuild the temple. And they may very well sacrifice these red heifer. They've already built the platform for it. They have the red heifers in Jerusalem now. They will look upon the site of where the second temple was that was destroyed by the Romans in 70 AD. the first temple was built by Solomon at almost the exact moment of the lowest ebb of the descending Kali Yuga, and where it then pivots to an ascending Kali Yuga, so the lowest point of human consciousness, right? But interestingly enough, he worked with both demons and angels, or jinn, depending on, in order to build that temple. And then it was destroyed by the Babylonians, and then they rebuilt the temple, and they had the second temple, and then they had, I think it was the Third Uprising against the Romans, and that's when the Romans pretty much wiped out the line of David, and most Jews of the ancient world were wiped out by the Romans in what some people call the first Holocaust. It was the Third Uprising, and the Romans had warned them, like, stop doing this shit, right? The first time they punished them pretty bad. The second time they said, if you revolt again, we will wipe you out. And they revolted a third time, and the Romans very close to wiped out all the Jewish people that were there in ancient Judea, right? They pretty much wiped them out. Some of the temple priesthood fled during that period of time, and they were able to flee, and they went to Europe, and this is the Deus Rex bloodline, to where those people can trace their bloodlines back to David and Solomon, and to I want to say the Levites. I sometimes get confused. There's like the priests of Aaron, and there's the Levites, and I sometimes get confused on those two. But they can trace their bloodline to the same bloodline that Yeshua comes from. And they, along with the Merovingians, when Mary Magdalene went over to France after the crucifixion, and formed that particular branch of the bloodline of David and Jesus, then again, these priests of the Second Temple also took their families, and they fled mostly to England, but also to other parts of Europe. But the Second Temple was destroyed. And in order to build the Third Temple, you have to have someone who, you have to have all the builders have to be cleansed in ashes from a burnt sacrifice of the Red Heifers. And those workers have to be cleansed and purified and have that ash put on their body before they begin work on the Third Temple. But there's a more significant barrier than getting some red heifers, and that is the Dome of the Rock. The Dome of the Rock is basically, I believe, the second most holy site in Islam after Mecca and Medina, or third, I guess, if you separate those two. It's right up there. It's the place where supposedly, I forget if Muhammad, like, he spoke to Archangel Gabriel there and got like his right to like form Islam, or if he ascended from the Temple Mount or had his like spiritual breakthrough, but he had some kind of extreme spiritual event happen there that's super important to Islam. And I apologize that I'm blanking on what the exact event was. But they built the Dome of the Rock Mosque in order to commemorate that event. And it's one of the holiest sites in Islam. And it's exactly where they need to build the Third Temple. Exactly. So how are you going to build that Third Temple with that giant building in the way? Well, they'd have to demolish it. So they've been digging under the Temple Mount for a while now. And some people say they found another ark. Timothy Hogan and the Templar have now revealed that the Templar dug under there and came up with, I want to say 5 arks, right? Including the Ark of the Covenant, but 5 arks because ark technology was part of the Atlantean technology that you see in like the Great Pyramid. You could put the ark exactly in the sarcophagus in the King's Chamber, or at Saqqara in that sarcophagus. You could drop the ark in there, and then if it has monatomic gold and you have the water running underneath and you have the quartz crystal on the outside and a gold capstone, then they can become a Tesla Wardenclyffe Tower style energy system. So they were digging around under there, supposedly found an ark, according to one rabbi that I spoke with like 20 years ago. He claimed they'd found the Ark of the Covenant when they were digging under there in more recent times, like in the 80s or 90s. I think he's mistaken. I think they found an ark, perhaps, but not the ark, because the Templar had already removed it like 1,000 years earlier. So they've been digging around under there, and there's been cracks forming in the foundation of the Dome of the Rock. And so I wonder, like, will they use a earthquake? Will they use an earthquake machine to crack it and then go, oh no, it's broken? Well, since it's already broken, we might as well just clean the rubble up and then build the second temple. Or will they just outright blow it up, right? Will they do a controlled demolition? Will they bring in a wrecking ball? Like, what are they going to do? But it seems like they're gearing up, possibly during this eclipse, to sacrifice the red heifer. And it's pretty nutty, and it makes sense because it's happening in Aries. It's happening in Aries, this eclipse. And mind you, the age of Aries is when Judaism arose in the first place. The age of Taurus is when Malachianism arose. And then because the precession of the equinox is the great year, we move backwards through the zodiac. You go from Taurus, when the age of Moloch began and the Kali Yugas, and then you go into Aries. And Aries is when Judaism arose, and that's why they use the ram's horn. And that's why they're a little on the aggressive side, historically speaking, right? Aries is like, you could say Aries is attached to Judaism from an astrological point of view. It's very complicated. I'm not saying this is like a one-size-fits-all final answer. I'm just saying it's, there is a very big significance, and I don't think it's an accident that during an eclipse that's happening in Aries, they might be thinking of doing this red heifer sacrifice. They've built this gigantic ass platform. They got the red heifers there. They're clearly gearing up. There's mainstream media coverage of this now. It's absolutely wild. And it seems like Passover is when they would want to actually like either get rid of the Dome of the Rock or begin the construction of the third temple. That's in April, and that's also in Ramadan. So you notice how there's a lot of weaponized immigration of especially Islamic people throughout Europe in a big way right now. It's been going on for 20 years almost, actually fully 20 years. But it really became weaponized in the 2010s. And that's when you see Israel suddenly puts its back into facilitating it and creating NGOs. That's when you see Soros do stuff around us, when Obama changes some of the laws to facilitate it. But it's really gone into hyperdrive in the past 4 years as well. And you see it in places like Ireland and elsewhere. And there is a backlash that's begun to form, like Geert Wilders in Holland, right? And he's in many ways a backlash against Islamic immigration, right? Illegal immigration. He's very much kind of like a reactionary response to that. So you have all these Islamic people all across the West. You don't even need like full-blown trained terrorist cells. If Israel frickin' blows up or otherwise destroys the Dome of the Rock, they're going to go absolutely beyond giga, mega, ultra ape shit. Islamic people, wherever they are, especially in the West. Because in the West, they'll feel like these are the people who did it. Because people in the West don't really understand the degree to which the Venetian black nobility frontmen folks, right? Because again, we got to remember it's Babylonian sorcerers are at the root of all the Malachian bullshit. But they have for the past 1,000 years or so, 700, 800 years, they've used a very tiny group within Judaism, within the Ashkenazi Jews who are Khazarian in character, a very tiny sliver of that group they have used as frontmen for their major operations, because after they got almost wiped out in the War of the League of Cambrai, they realized that it wasn't enough to just have Jewish frontmen for money lending. They needed it for everything, Jewish or British. British is their other favorite group of frontmen. And they liquidated all their assets in Venice, and they moved up to, and you can see more in this in my Venetian Black Nobility series, they moved up to Amsterdam, and they moved up to the city of London, right? And the British Empire is just the Venetian, it's the Venetian Empire, really. And so it's important to keep that in mind with what I'm saying now. But what a lot of people in the West don't understand is how those frontmen, to a very large degree, administrate and run things. But the Muslims understand this. They understand this, and they will vent their rage, which they can't really direct at Israel, on the countries that they're already in. And that would be a potential, like, really helpful thing for example, the Biden administration, because if there was some kind of like excuse, they might just cancel the election. I think if they do that, that'll play right into the Luciferians' hands. I kind of think the two scenarios of what's going to happen this fall is either, I think the scenario that would be smoothest is Trump will win with a landslide. The Malachians can't let that stand. They arrest Trump. But what they don't understand is that it's Trump's guys are his jailers, that those are Luciferian assets. And then they do a counter coup, right? Much like they did in 2016 with the, I forget that guy's name, Steve Pisanik or whatever talks about it. Pascal Najati has been using that guy's clip of talking about how they did a counter coup in 2016 and used Julian Assange and WikiLeaks to defeat a coup by Obama and Hillary. And definitely, like, I'm of the opinion that we've had maybe one legit election in the 21st century, which would have been Obama winning in 2008, although he stole the primary from Hillary. But I think all the rest are very dubious at best. And so imagine a scenario where, like, you have to figure out how you can convince people to do these mass arrests, right? You're Trump and the Luciferians, and you're like, how can we convince people to do these mass arrests? Well, you see the results of 2020, and you could come out and say it, but there's been 4 years of orange man bad, orange man bad, orange man bad. If you, at that point, decide to trot out all the evidence you have, we have everything, right? You trot that out, the country would have immediately erupted into a civil war. There's no way they could have done it. So what they decided to do instead was to let Trump retain control of the military as commander in chief, right? This is that 17th letter of the alphabet stuff, right? And again, you can't take it at face value as they're white hats, because they're certainly not. But gray hat Luciferians, then all of a sudden, and also that there's a ton of lying and manipulation and fifth generation propaganda warfare, this weird Luciferian propaganda that's like nuggets of like extreme truth bombs surrounded by obvious falsehood and bullshit, right? You have Trump still in there in control of the military, and you let some of the military that don't matter, some of the pawns get sacrificed, and then you let 4 years of the Malachians, and you're giving them a little push and whispering in their ear and applying pressure to them so they act out and act crazy and reveal how fucking insane they are and how despotic and tyrannical they are. You say, yeah, Klaus, have them eat the bugs. Oh, you know you shouldn't say that before I speak. It gets me too turned on, yeah. Oh, I love thinking of these poor people eating the bugs. Oh, God, do I have time to rub one out before I speak before the WAF? Like these insane psychopath Malachians and their like humiliation and shame rituals and their just hatred of all of natural law and their desire to destroy God. Like, it's all out on display now, right? And think about it. Different things wake up different people. For some people, it's, you know, twerking in front of kindergartners is what sets them off, or having pedophilic pornography right there in the school systems. And then they say, oh, they're book burning. They won't let us have pedophilic propaganda pornography in the schools, right? A lot of parents are like, whoa, and get filled with rage in that. Some people don't like the critical race theory stuff. Some people don't like that talking about either of those things. The FBI is looking into those parents, right? Some people got woken up by this insane thing that happened in New York where like they're going to seize his assets. They're saying he can't do business there anymore. A lot of businessmen are like, wow, how do I know I won't be on the chopping block? They just like have this total fake lawfare thing, and they just decide to take his assets for no crime whatsoever, except the judge decides it's a crime post facto, even though Trump paid back the loans in full. Like, something's very wrong here. Some people are being awakened by this illegal immigrant army that Biden and the CCP and the WEF and Soros are coordinating this weaponized immigration crap. That's waking up people. There's lots of different things that wake people up. But what would it take? What would it take to have your average Democrat, not the blue hair trans people who are completely lost, right? But I'm talking about Democrats who are decent people, but have been brainwashed and conditioned to support the Democratic Party. What would it take for them to be on board with not just Trump winning, but with Trump then arresting a bunch of people like the Clintons, like the Obamas? Well, I think the only thing that would get people to do it is all the stuff I just described, with further revelations that'll come from Puff Daddy and elsewhere about the pedophilia, about the central banking, right? About all these crimes the Malakians have committed for the past 6,000 years. Not just drip, 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 and then a huge dump about that information. That's still not enough. But if Biden cancels the election or Trump wins in a landslide, which seems baked in at this point, and then they arrest him, that would be enough. That would be enough to where you get 80 to 90% of the country, worst case 70 to 75% of the country on board with, okay, we need to do the Luciferian Nuremberg 2.0, grab people, seize their assets, and hang them from the neck. That's it. That's what it would take. It would take something on that level before people would come on board with it. And if you think about it from like a high level strategy, 5th generation information-based warfare, that's exactly the kind of move. That's exactly what would be required to overcome this decades of conditioning and MK Ultra mind control and so forth that so much of the United States citizenry is under that. And between now and then, refer to that angelic prophecy from the beginning of the year. There's going to be more terrorist attacks. It's funny because one of them's already come true. This Russian one fulfills one of the things that the angel said, and they said it would be around this time too. That 322 attack fulfills one of the things, a major international terrorist event that didn't happen in the United States. So go back and check that out if you're interested in like some of the predictions the angel said. But I think that strap in, boys and girls, because it's just going to get nuttier from here. I mean, look how much has happened, and we're not even done with March yet. It's been nutty. I'm sure I'm missing huge things, and there'll probably be stuff in the comments. Real quick, just to correct, you never reduce master numbers when adding or summing 11, 22, or 33. So say you're born March 11, 2024, it's 3 plus 11 plus 2 plus 2 plus 4 equals 22. I see. So 322, you wouldn't reduce it because it's a master number. I got it now. Thank you, Alex. See, this is where I could see Alex with his glasses on the tip of his nose going in. I've taught you better than this, I thought. I'm just giving you shit, man. Alex is a brilliant man, and I'm happy to call him a friend. So trying to think if there's anything else. So we've kind of announced it. We're not quite sure, but there is going to be some sort of, we're trying to figure out how to do it. I don't know if it'll be primarily online, but we would like to have an in-person meeting to where different people who like the stuff that's talked about on the channel can come together and can start forming more community. I'm going to get a digital space set up first. When I have something, I have a major thing that I'm doing over the next 2 weeks, right during the eclipses. When I've completed that project and series of tasks, one of the main things I'm going to do on the other side of that in early mid-April is I'm going to set up a forum so people can bounce ideas off each other, and we can talk about how do we proceed as mosties, as most high, people who are aspiring and moving towards that most high consciousness. How do we do things like create these golden age enclaves? How do we create that kind of community to where it's we're able to plant those seeds for the golden age that is yet to come? And so I'm going to have that digital space, but then later this year we're going to have a in-person meeting and also a Zoom, some kind of, there'll be some kind of Zoom option as well. But I'm hoping to get people to come meet in person. It'll be in Oregon because I live here, and I will say tip of the hat to Heather Russo, and perhaps Elle might be helping Heather in that. Heather Russo is working to coordinate this and is doing all the heavy lifting and organizing stuff, because if you watch this channel enough, you know that there's no hope of anything being organized if I was to do it. I'm great at visionary stuff and magical, mystical stuff. I'm super talented at that, but organization is not Ian's strong suit. So, all right, this seems like a great place to take a break, but I like this. Chaos Ronan says, get those likes up. I'm just going to type in real quick Q&A when Ian returns after the short break. And we'll just do a real quick break. You can run to the bathroom, smoke a bowl, whatever you want to do. Smoke them if you got them. And we will return, and then I will do the Q&A in the second half. So please, if you would, write them in all caps, and it doesn't have to be about anything that was covered here. It can be general questions. One thing I will say is that this eclipse, I have been told, and I'm already experiencing, it's particularly profound for me because being a Libra rising, it's happening on my first house, sense of self, destiny, and seventh house, partnerships of various kind axis. And it's already playing out very powerfully for me. Right now, it's a little bit like clearing out of things that have been holding me back, I think is a good way of putting it, in order for better things to come in the future. But wherever this eclipse is taking place in your chart, that axis of those two houses is going to be super activated. And probably if you're watching this right now, that means that you are among the people who are awakening, and that this eclipse is going to really activate you. We're about to, we're now less than a year before the end of the Kali Yuga. How cool is that, right? Less than a year from now, Kali Yuga is over. That doesn't mean that like we wake up on March 22nd of 2025 and we go outside and everyone's like, kumbaya, my love, kumbaya. First of all, I don't want to live in that world. But secondly, like, we won't have some smooth, immediate golden age like the instant that the Kali Yuga is over. More like the Malachians' power will be broken. And then the Luciferians will get the knives out and get the lead out. And they'll begin the running of the table on the Malachians. Now, a whole fuck ton of things are going to happen before then. So it's not like things are going to be like super smooth up until then. It just means that once we get to dawn on March 21st, 2025, the Kali Yuga is officially over. It's over. And there'll be a waterfall cascade event of loss of power from the Malachians. And likely there'll be a lot of chaos. There always is in transitions. But I'm really excited for it because a much better world awaits us on the other side of that. And the slightly intimidating bottleneck event that the angels talk about. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that as fodder for folks. Let's take a break now, and then come up with some great questions for me, guys. That's a challenge. I'm throwing down the gauntlet. Yeah. All right. Let's see. So first thing, I'll mute and then put it on. See you guys in about 3 to 5 minutes. Alrighty. So, hey, still got 37 people. That's fantastic. That's a testament to how awesome the fans of this channel are. So, yeah, let me get ready to check these out. But I'm trying to decide here. I'm really torn right now. Do I go Dr. Disrespect? Do I go Prime Ric Flair? Or do I go Leroy Jenkins here? I think I gotta give it up for Prime Ric Flair. Woo! Let's do this, guys. All right. Yeah, Ric Flair's been on my mind a lot recently because of the illustrious L had the best reaction to the new. I was so stoked, you guys, when I saw this. Like the Angels had shown me like months ago that I needed to have a new intro and I needed to like pop more and whatever. And then I had like kind of a vision about the music, but it wasn't super clear. And then my boy Brent War, fucking the maestro, he like started to put it out. And then like Brent was just, he fucking like brought the thunder. He like brought this awesome thing with the, I think it's a glockenspiel even. Like it has this fucking, it's really cool. I wonder if I can do it, if I can share it with people on here and have you guys hear the sound. I don't want to share it if I can't hear the sound. So I'll just wait. It's going to be on the 28th when that the 9 Choirs of Angels video drops. The intro will be on, and then it'll be on every intro from then on out. But I had this awesome vision, and then Brent started to make it happen. And then poor Brent and I just like, we ran, especially Brent. He was feeling bad. It wasn't his fault at all. We just ran into wall after wall after wall because I really wanted female vocals and I wanted the right female vocals. And I thought I had the perfect woman to do it, who is, she's a professional musician. She has this really ethereal voice. And like, then it couldn't happen. And then I was like, what about my friend Krista? And I was like, Krista's like an amazing, artist as well. And the reason I didn't go with Krista at first is because Krista has a much more like sultry, like Kathleen Turner, prime Kathleen Turner from the 80s, Jessica Rabbit, like sexy, dusky, whiskey drinking voice, right? And so I thought, oh, that isn't quite what I want was what I thought. But I asked Krista to do it, and then Krista had to move across the country, and so then it took a while, but she finally landed, and she's, I won't say where you are, Krista, but Krista's wherever she is now, and she like went in, and she just fucking, boom, knocked it out of the park, fucking amazing, and I was like, wow, this sounds really good, and then I had an immediate vision. I knew exactly what I wanted to see, and actually someone else, Heather, had a very similar part of the vision that I had. I knew exactly what I wanted, and I said it to my friend Clint, who did the Virtues, the little short Virtues video that's like TikTok size or whatever. He edited that, and I was like, "Hey, could you possibly do this edit?" And he's like, "I don't know," and then he fucking crushed it, and I was like, what am I feeling right now? I was so excited, and so I showed it to Elle and Heather because they're helping with a bunch of stuff. So I showed it to them first. And first, Elle sends back a explodey emoji, and then she goes, literally me right now. And she had a prime, in his prime, we're talking 1989, Ric Flair with his hair just all coked out and pink. And she goes, literally me right now. Woo! And I was like, yes, that's what I'm feeling. It's not Macho Man. It's not Hulk Hogan. It's far more coked up and over the top than that. And I'm like, it's prime Ric Flair. I was like, holy shit. Just like she plucked it just right out of my mind. Exactly this energy that I had. So pretty exciting and awesome. And no, I did not take a bump of Coke off stage. I did have a puff of a bowl, but no, I am just super hyped about this. Okay, so let's get to it. So Elle, did you collect questions for me? Great. So I'm going to do Elle's questions first, and then I'll go back and read the like repartee when I get done with the questions. So it looks like there's some questions that were not in all caps. If you have a question and Elle hasn't put it in the chat, then if you could please write it again in all caps. Okay, so Jay Hanley says, are you offering angelic magic classes again? I'm very interested. Yes, I teach quarterly. I do like a winter class, a spring class, a summer class, and a fall class. There will not be a, there either won't be a summer or a fall, because I'm going to be doing an archangelic magic class in the gathering. So I might do I can maybe do a class also in August, and then I would just skip. There probably will be no fall sort of for entry level like Angelic Magic 101 class where you learn the 72 Shem Angels. So it won't be in the fall, but there will be a spring one that I'm going to launch. It'll probably actually take place in May. I have this huge thing coming up, guys, over the next 2 weeks, and it's taking all my focus until early April. But then like in May, I'm going to do the spring class, and then probably in August, then I'll do a summer class. And the classes are fairly small, and I can only really do kind of like 2 concurrently. Anything more than that might be a bit much, although maybe not. Some things have freed up recently for me, so I have more energy. I also I met really special people, including Elle from the Australian Oceania Magic class. I had 2 people in Australia and 1 person in Thailand take the class. So I think I might do I might also do, I've heard some interest from a European class. So I think really it depends on if you're interested in Angelic Magic classes, just send me an email, let me know, and then I'll let you know when it drops, and I'll also announce it on the channel. And if you're in Europe or Asia and you would like to do the class, what would help me is if you could find at least 1 other person who wants to do it, and preferably 2. And if you find 3 people, you won't want to tell them about this video, but if you found 3 people who want to do it, I would consider that you get the class free. And then it makes it worth my time to do it in the kind of crazy hours I have to do it. Because you can ask Elle, we were literally starting our classes at 10:30 at night for me. And those classes sometimes went to literally 2 in the morning for me. And that was a bit grueling. And it gets tricky too with the international dateline. It has to start on a Thursday, but just send me an email, and I will put your name on the list for when I offer it, and I'll give you a first crack at it. Anyone who emails me, I'll give you first crack at a slot. Of course, you have to then sign up for it right away when I put it up. So Hirschman says, could you explain your view on angels? How do their symbols, planets, constellations, numbers, ratios correlate to the actual beings as you see them or interact with them? Well, okay, so a couple things here. I could talk literally all day about angelic magic and my experience of it, and I wouldn't even scratch the surface, because the kind of magic that I teach in my introduction class, I'm actually going to very soon start operating from my own book. I just haven't determined yet whether certain angelic seals or certain talismans are public domain. I believe they are. But once I determine that, then I'm going to, and Elle, you should look that up since you're helping me with that project. If those are public domain, which I believe they are, because they go back to at least medieval times, and I believe that they are very similar to stuff that was used in the time of King Solomon, that probably King Solomon had given to him directly by the angels, would be my guess. So I started with that kind of magic, which is very well known. But if you look into angelic magic, I believe you'll discover the same thing I did. There's angelic magic, there's archangelic magic, and then that's it. Now, I've heard that there's some people who claim to teach seraphim magic. That does not make any sense to me. It doesn't match my experience at all, because my experience was I worked with the 72 Shem angels, and I developed, thanks to certain spirits that I was working with, as well as the angels, I was able to develop a telepathic connection with the angels. And that was what allowed everything that happened after that, because I was working with the 72 named angels, and there's a 9 Choirs of the Angels video coming out this week, by the way, on the 28th. So watch for that. But I was working with them, and I said to Raziel, because at this point I had a telepathic connection with him, I did all the steps to summon Raziel and then ask him to bring the angels to me. And I said to him, I feel uncomfortable about telling these beautiful beings of light what to do, because you use a word of power to sort of compel them. There's certain aspects to it that I felt uncomfortable with, because it's Solomonic theurgic magic, but it has a compulsion element to it, to where you're I don't want to say you're forcing the angels, but you're at least compelling them to come to you, and then to at least take your request under advisement as to whether or not they're going to fulfill it. They won't fulfill it if it'll bring disharmony into your life, but there's a compulsion element to it to some degree. And I said, I don't like telling these angels what to do. And he said, oh, you shouldn't worry about it. That's exactly what they were created to do. They love doing it because it's fulfilling their purpose. They love to do it. They're actually the angels who answer almost all prayers. And so, the same angels that the magician works with, the 72 Shem angels, are the same angels that answer the faithful's prayers, people who are faithful to the Most High, regardless of what religion they're in, because the angels are not Jewish, they're not Muslim, they're not Christian, despite appearing heavily in all three Abrahamic faiths. The angels are talked about by the Sumerians. They talk about Archangel Michael. And in India, they call these same beings the Devas, right? That's the Indian conception of these exact same beings. They're these beings of light that are here to sort of administer and carry out the will of the deity known as the Most High. And so when I said this to him, he said to me, yeah, you should just do it. They love doing it. And I said, well, how can I serve the celestial current in the Most High? And he goes, now you're asking the right question. And he then said, okay, you need to do archangelic magic now. And he taught me a very specific form of archangelic magic. And basically the angels just tested me. They tested me on whether now that lower angels had shown me that the angels exist to serve us. But the archangels told me that our purpose is to serve others, to serve other humans. And so they asked me to do that in various ways, and they tested me and they asked things of me. And I didn't actually ask things of them. They asked things of me, acts of charity and reaching out to people who are in dark places, all this kind of other stuff. And then Raziel gave me, when I completed that, which took quite a bit of time and effort, I think 22 days, then he said, here's the key to how you interact with the principalities. And through the principalities, you can perhaps make your way up to the higher spheres. And it was this long, grueling process of inner work. It was not easy. It was neither easy nor was it pleasant, actually, except for sometimes. There were things like with the virtues. Sometimes it'd be like ecstatic and blissful, but other times it'd be about integrating my shadow and having to face all my character defects and flaws and begin to work on them in a really honest way and integrate those darker aspects of myself to step into my divine masculine and out of this beta male dark feminine that I was in. I rejected the dark masculine of the player Andrew Tate guy. I didn't like that model. And so I was like, well, this dark feminine nice guy is better. And society kind of tells you those two. And so I had to step into my divine masculine. That's something that's still in process for me. All of this is still in process. Another thing about working with the angels is the higher up you go, the more profound the effect those angels have on your world and what happens in your world. But it takes much, much longer to get to you because their vibration is so different from ours. It's so much higher. And so it was a super grueling path. So people who are saying, oh, I'll teach you seraphim magic. I'm like, that's like someone, to me, that's like someone saying I'm an 8th degree black belt. Oh, hi there, first time student. You're now an 8th degree black belt. It doesn't make any fucking sense to me. It took me basically a year to where during that entire year, I was doing things like 44-day straight rituals to where every day I would from anywhere from 2.5 hours to like 4 hours be in deep meditation, communing with the angels, and they would be taking me on this journey of internal transformation. And so when people tell me, oh, seraphim magic, blah, blah, whatever, I'm like, whoa, yeah, I don't know. The point of this story, and other than to just give more information, is to explain that everything I know about angelic magic beyond the 72 Shem angels is 100% my own gnosis and direct connection with the angels. I have not super studied what other people say about any of the angels because, first of all, I didn't find particularly satisfying information other than about the archangels, about the principalities, the virtues, the powers, the dominions, the Ophanim, aka thrones, cherubim, and seraphim. I found very scant information about anything beyond the archangels. And so then once I went on this journey, I was like, well, I don't need to learn all that stuff. So I don't know all of the associations with the archangels to answer your question. I do know planetary angels like Cassiel is the archangel of Saturn, right? Archangel Samiel is the archangel of Mars, right? Trying to think, I can't remember even all the days that the different angels are associated with. I think Archangel Gabriel is associated with Monday and the moon. So those angels that I do know and have paid attention to their astrological archetype, being a Vedic astrologer and having done various forms of astrology for, showing your age here, Ian, about 27 years, and having done Vedic astrology now since 2007, so 17 years on that, and that's my focus and specialty. I know astrology very well. And I will say that the angels definitely have the qualities of those planets. And so that was a very lengthy answer to say, I don't actually know what all the different associations there are with the different angels. So it's interesting because I just learned it directly, and it didn't seem like it was super relevant to what they taught me. I will say astrology figured very prominently as I moved up the spheres in terms of like internal symbols and symbolism. It was just it's a very profound experience and very humbling, and that's what I'm going to be eventually teaching all of that. I'm going to be teaching the higher order angels and how to access them, but only to carefully vetted people that I've worked with at every step of the way, because it's very sacred. I don't really need to gatekeep at all, actually, except for I just feel a desire to, out of honor and respect for the gnosis I've received. I feel like it's very sacred information for me, and in order for me to keep it in integrity in myself and sacred, I will act as a gatekeeper and vet people, but I don't need to. The angels do it, especially whenever you phase shift from one sphere to the other, like the principalities are in the third sphere. When you go from the third sphere to the second sphere, that is a mega change in vibration. It's much more significant. The difference between angels and principalities is actually less than the difference between principalities and virtues in terms of vibration. So that phase shift, the angels that are before that phase shift, so it's actually just only two groups of angels. It's the principalities are the gatekeepers of the second sphere, and then the dominions are the gatekeepers of the first sphere. And those angels test you, boy. They test you hard. And so I don't even need to act as a gatekeeper, but I'm going to vet people. And so people who want to learn magic at any level have to go through the lower classes, because I need to see, I need to like understand who they are, watch how the magic causes it to transform them, right? Because it's invocation. You're inviting the angels in to change yourself so you can be more in alignment with natural law and the emanations of the Most High. That's the goal. I want to see how that person transforms and opens up. And then it does take a certain amount of inherent natural talent, telepathic talent, or gained. I had to gain it. I had some amount of natural talent there, of telepathic connection to spirits. I definitely have a lot of talent there, but I had to earn it, the really strong connection I have with the angels now, to where I hear them as though they're almost people in the same room as me. All right, super long-winded answer to not answer your question. Classic White Lotus of light. Okay, Brenton, how does one determine where this upcoming eclipse is happening in one's chart? Well, you just pull up your chart and then look at the transits, and you'll see that, or you can just pull up your chart and look that. I would actually answer your question here, Brent, by just pulling up your chart and looking. In fact, I'm going to do it just out of fun. I won't share it though, because I don't want to like dox your chart. But you would pull up your chart, and then you would say, where does actually, because I'm talking in Western terms when I say it's happening in Aries and Libra, because it's happening in Virgo and Pisces in sidereal terms. So it's the tropical Placidus where it's happening in the Aries and Libra. I just realized I don't have your chart on Astro. I only have it in the Vedic form. Well, it's happening along the axis of your natal moon. So I can say that in your natal chart. And it's happening in your third house, ninth house in your Navamsa or post 40 chart since you're over 40. So it's the 5th, 11th house in your natal. So children, friends, windfalls, past life credit, and then third house of short journeys. And then, by the way, I'm not going to do this for everyone. Brent is a friend of mine. I won't answer a lot of like personal astrology questions for free. I'll give you tips on how to look it up yourself, but that's because Brent's my boy. So it's interesting. It happens along your moon. It hits your moon in your Navamsa as well. So it's third, ninth house. The third house is like short journeys. So journeys within the continental United States. So not Alaska or Hawaii, but anywhere else in the US would be seen as third house travel. So that would be local travel and up to and including like you could travel to the East Coast, right? Courage, younger siblings, hard work and effort, art, music, hint, hint, music. And the ninth house of good fortune and fatherhood and guru and mentor. So, for example, you might have a online guru of some sort who tells you about astrology. All right. So I even did a mini reading for you, Brent. There you go. I wouldn't do that for other people, Brent. I know sometimes you wonder if I think you're a friend. I definitely think you're a friend, my brother. You did incredible work. I'm just insanely busy right now. It can't rain all the time. Oh, don't move to Oregon and test that theory. It fucking can rain all the time, as it turns out. So it can't rain all the time. Great name, though. Hundreds of Dark Nights of the Soul. I'm curious about your experience with the subject. Oh, yeah. Is this that one? Oh, yeah. It is that person I was thinking of. Interesting. Yeah, so I said I had hundreds of Dark Nights of the Soul. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I have a severe trauma background. I have complex PTSD. I'm still healing from it. I was super badly abused as a child not by my father, not by my mother. I'll just say that. But I was severely badly abused. My father did beat me, boomer beating up a Gen X kid style. He definitely did that. And he also like emotionally abused me. My father did, although we healed many years later. We healed, and he really worked super hard to make it up to me and to connect with me. And we were able to do a tremendous amount of healing before he died. But he never harmed me sexually, but these other people did. I was kind of pulled into a pedophile ring for a while when I was a kid. And yeah, we were prostituted out periodically. It didn't happen all the time. It just happened sometimes. Yeah, it was pretty bad. I once went to a PTSD counselor, and he said that he was a specialist in PTSD, and he said that he'd only seen complex PTSD even. He'd only seen one case worse than mine. He said, this is where I was at to show you how far I've come and how far you can go, right? If you put in the work and you put in the self-honesty at looking at yourself in the mirror and really work on the healing, you can do it too. But to give you some sense of how far I've come, he said that I was tied for the worst CPTSD he had ever seen, and the other person had been tortured in a black site as a political prisoner, had been straight up tortured by like some intelligence agency in a torture pit. And so that has led me to innumerable Dark Nights of the Soul. I mean, I did have one serious suicide attempt when I was a teenager, and I cut myself a number of times. I had a lot of Dark Nights of the Soul. I had a lot of Dark Nights of the Soul as an adult. When my eldest son was born, he's 15. I say that because I hope to have future children. But when my firstborn, that's a better way of putting him, when my firstborn son was born, and he's 15 now, it was a huge trigger for me around trauma. It also was a huge trigger for me when my grandmother died and also when my father died. All three of those were big triggers. And I was losing my mind after my dad died, because my dad was, despite what I said about him being physically abusive, he protected me unconsciously because he didn't know what was going on, because I was scared to tell him. But he would periodically protect me from the pedophiles just by his mere badass presence, because my father was many things, But one of the many things my father was an extreme badass who fucking grew up in rural Montana and went Russell Crowe fighting around the world in the fucking early 60s. My dad lived that South Park episode. Boy, crikey, blimey, gonna have to get in a bit of a knuckle dust up here. That Russell Crowe fighting around the world, South Park, one of my all-time favorite South Parks. Like where he just goes around and just is like, oh, and gets in the fight. Ironically, my father was saved by Australians, funnily enough, was saved by Australians when he was going to be beat to death and killed by a group of Greeks. Some Australians intervened on my dad's behalf. So, I mean, my dad was truly living the Russell Crowe fighting around the world. And so he was an extreme badass, and he kept these pedos at bay. They just wouldn't come around when he was around. Unfortunately, my father traveled on business a lot, and then they'd have access to me. And so, yeah, I wanted to kill myself 100% when my dad died because I felt like my guardian was gone. And I actually still didn't understand what was going on because I hadn't uncorked those memories because I had deeply suppressed them. And my wife at the time was like, dude, if you don't get help, like, I don't even know. Like, I don't want to divorce you, but you've got to get help. And I knew she was right. And I had to do it for my son, for my little son, who was like 18 months old. And I, who I'm adore. And that was why I didn't kill myself, was because I had a child. Life hack. If you want an enormous sense of responsibility and to not kill yourself, I actually do not do that. Get healthy and then have a kid. That's the right thing to do. My son saved my life. And I feel sad that my son had to see me in such a dark place, but he also has seen how far I've come because almost all my healing has happened during my son's lifetime, and my son has seen me warts and all, and loves me. And so I went through innumerable dark nights of the soul. I actually had, I had one in the past couple of years that was pretty intense. But they don't happen almost at all anymore. And I just would say to you that on the other side of them, just love yourself through it. And on the other side of use it as to like rocket you upwards, as though you were like shooting a satellite and bending it around a planet. Use that gravity of it to go up. The shamanic journey, you go down through the underworld. Like Odin hung himself from Yggdrasil, the world tree, and he went down into the underworld to Nephilim, I think it's called. Nephelheim, maybe, is what it's called, I think, in Norse mythology. And he hung himself from the neck, and when he woke up because he was hung himself, right? So he goes to death's door, liminal state, much like my ER visit that I talked about in a prior episode, or when I was in the ICU, I should say, before Christmas. And his finger twitched, and in the dust wrote the Futhark, the runes. And so he brought back the knowledge of the underworld and used that actually to elevate consciousness. I mean, that's the point of the Kali Yuga too. The Kali Yuga is to create this like, whoa, so we can go up in a new direction in the Golden Age than prior iterations of the Golden Age. So we can do the Golden Age again, but now it's a new iteration. It won't be Atlantis. It'll be something else, right? It won't be Lemuria. It would be something else. It won't be Hyperborea. It'll be this new, Polaris, Hyperborea, Lemuria, Atlantis, right? Each one has been a different version of the Golden Age. And we're going to have something else entirely with this new Golden Age. But you weren't born now to give up at the 1-inch line. It can't rain all the time. Truly. And you have the strength within you to do exactly what I did. Everybody does. And hopefully that's helpful and inspiring to you. All right. Awaken and heal. How can we best help when the chaos descends and all the... I think there's probably more to that comment. How can we help the best when the chaos descends and all the shit hits the fan? Something to that effect. Well, first things first, get prepared. If you have the resources, get materially prepared. But what everyone can do, regardless of their level of resources, is they can do the inner work. They can face their shadow. They can heal. They can transmute their trauma and step into their power. A lot of people who are incredibly powerful workers had a journey like me. A mystic once told me, Ian, the brightest lights go to the darkest places. So work on your inner state, your inner landscape. And if you get that right, you'll be able to navigate whatever kind of chaos comes up. You'll be able to ride that. You'll be able to ride that surf of the natural law and get your vibration in alignment with it. And then you can weave through whatever difficulties. Anyone who's been involved in an actual hardcore war knows that who knows how you get through things. I know this guy who's a Navy SEAL, and someone threw like a satchel charge out, and it blew up right near him, and it killed a number of people around him, and it badly maimed other people, and he was completely unscratched. And this man had like one of the most amazing vibrations of any human I've ever met, because his confidence level was so fucking high. He knew exactly who he was, and he was completely at peace with who he was and what he did. I met other guys who were like extremely badass, but they didn't have this vibration like this man. This man, he was just like a fully integrated man, like divine masculine, and just like fulfilling his dharma that he had to do. And he was completely unscratched by the satchel charge. It just, if you get your inner state right, you'll be able to do stuff like that. You'll be able to, there'll be people having a firefight, and you'll just walk through peacefully, and they won't shoot at you, and you won't get hit at. Don't test this. Obviously, use some common sense here. I'm not saying, oh my God, I'm bulletproof. Quick, there's a drive-by going by. Let's prove that the angels love me by getting in between the house and the gangbangers who are lighting it up. That's how I'll know. No, that's how you'll die. So don't do that. I'm just saying you'll be able to weave through whatever kind of chaos without it affecting you. So that's the best thing that you can do, is to get right within, because if you're right within, you'll be able to handle whatever happens. And sure, get food if you can afford it. Get precious metals, get a point and click device to help you fend off perhaps an army that's been sent here by the CCP, or terrorist cells or whatever. Like, it could happen that you'll need that tool, right? Get all the stuff you need, food and water first and foremost, medicine if you need that. Then you can get the point and click so you can keep all that. And then also get precious metals if you have more. And if you still have money left over, you can look into some of the fintech crypto stuff, because we're going to need resources to help people. But if you don't have a lot of resources, then it's even more important that you get right within, right? We don't have a lot of time here to like be building amazing skill sets. There's just not enough time. What we can do is build wisdom and compassion and being in the flow state, all of which will result from you doing that inner work. And if you're in that flow state, it kind of won't matter how many resources you have, other than it is good to have more of it, right? Because then you can help more people. Because we need resources in order to do anything in this world, That's why you don't see homeless people creating like uprisings. They can't. They're just scrambling to survive. That's part of the reason that the WEF is trying to grind everyone down, is so they don't have the resource to do it. Don't buy the bullshit. It's okay to have resources. And if you're blessed enough to have resources, now's the time to deploy them wisely. So I'm just going through L's, and then I'll go back and look at the other ones. So let's see what L says. Living free. Does the ruling energies change each yoga? E.g. Lucifer rules the current Bronze Age, so in the next Bronze Age, will Enki rule in his place? Well, in my opinion, I believe that Enki and Lucifer are two different names for the same being. There's just a lot of similarity there. And so regardless of the name you use, it's interesting you would say that, because in a certain sense, you're on the right track. Lucifer is just the name that we use in the 2020s in like the Judeo-Christian world. I think that Lucifer, I'm not 100% of this. Okay, so here, let me give you another example. Lucifer is Loki, right? And then I'll tell you my fringe theory that I'm still refining, so don't get too married to it. But it seems to me that the Most High is Brahman, the creator, and that Vishnu, the preserver, is Lucifer. And you might say, what? How can that be? Well, Lucifer is who overthrows Moloch and preserves us from total annihilation that Moloch would like to wreak upon us. Vishnu is also who knocks us out of stagnation of the Golden Age, or Lucifer knocks us out of the stagnation of the Golden Age in order for us to begin the new descent, so we can get that momentum and learn all those lessons to then create the next Golden Age, the next iteration. But we had to go through the hardcore purification of the Kali Yuga, of being on Moloch's anvil and pounding out the karma, right? Pounding out and turning us into like survivors of another Kali Yuga, and hopefully having gained wisdom from the horrors of the Kali Yuga, that we can do that. So in the next ascending Bronze Age, the being might not be known as Lucifer, right? In the prior Bronze Age, even the one that is before the Kali Yugas, right? The ones that would have been during the Kemet, which then became Egypt, right? Pre-dynastic Egypt was the last Bronze Age, descending Bronze Age. We have very scant records of it. Anything before 6,000 years ago, we have very scant records. At that time, that dominant being might have had a different name, right? You might look to the Egyptian pantheon, and I haven't considered. I know that I think it's Hathor is like the female aspect of Lucifer. Is it Hathor? I think so. And so that'd be like the Venusian aspect of Lucifer. Lucifer has the qualities of the higher and lower aspect of Venus, the higher and lower aspect of Mercury, and then the higher aspect of Mars. And the lower aspect of Mars is Moloch, and the lower aspect of Saturn is Moloch. And then the higher aspect of the Sun and the higher aspect of Jupiter combined, or Jupiter Kazemi, is the Most High energy. So you're right that there'll be a different name almost certainly for that being in the next Bronze Age, because there'll be a different culture, of course. There's some who believe we choose our lives before we incarnate. If you believe this idea, why do you think you'd choose what happened in your childhood? Well, it's given me tremendous compassion for especially other men who've gone through what I've gone through. I work with some men who have gone through what I've gone through and try and help them where I can. It's a difficult thing, and it's not something where you can force other people's growth. They have to figure out and go through the healing process on their own. It's different for everyone because people had different experiences. It's very different for someone who maybe was harmed by their father than it is for someone who was harmed by like a neighbor or a priest or whatever. Right? It's a very different experience when it's your own blood. And I'm fortunate that my father was not who harmed me in that way. And so my father never violated that boundary. Or siblings, like the closer they are to you, the more devastating in a certain way that experience is. It also activated me psychically in a massive way. I mean, there's more to that story, but it's a big part of why I'm so psychic, because it activates the Kundalini energy. And it's a grim and dark subject. That's part of the reason the Malachians do that, is some amount of these, sometimes they do it to like their own offspring or whatever, and then that activates them and makes their offspring psychic. Not always, but very often, especially men who have been sodomized, right? That's what we're talking about here. Are very psychic because they were activated by that. And you're activated in multiple ways. One, that activates the Kundalini, and two, it also it's an uncomfortable subject, and so I'm just working through some of my own like internal feelings while I talk about this. It activates the Kundalini, but it also can cause you to dissociate, and if you dissociate enough, that's astral projection. And once you astrally project, quite a lot opens up for you. So it made me more psychic. It made me more compassionate. I think it gives me a fairly profound story that hopefully can help other people and inspire them to heal and change. I have Pluto 0 degrees conjunct to my ascendant. I don't know, man. I wouldn't mind asking my higher self that myself. But, you know, every aspect of what I've been through in this life has made me the man I am today, and I wouldn't change any of it, even that. So, and believe me, I did not enjoy it, to put it mildly. It was horrific, and it ruined a huge section of my life. I was very unproductive compared to what I could be, because of it, because I was putting all my energy into healing. And so, yeah, I don't know. Now my life is going woof, you know, and it's like a lot better now. And so, I sometimes blame my last name, Ferguson, right? The Ferguson family motto is Dulcius ex asperus. And in Latin, that means, and it shows a bee on a thistle, right? That's the family icon of the thistle flower, right? So it has spikes and ouchies on it, but it has a bee on it. And and Dulcius ex asperus means sweeter after adversity. I'm going to change the family crest. I'm going to reform the clan, and I'm going to say whatever it is in Latin that says super fucking cakewalk life. You just roll out of bed to fame and fortune, roll out of bed to fame and fortune, women, if that's your thing, men, if that's your thing, and you just have a lot of amazing sex, and life's just pretty chill, bro. So whatever that would be in Latin, which seems like it might be somewhat of a long Latin phrase, but sweeter after adversity. Why? No, actually, I get it. Weirdly enough, I mean, I'm making a joke there, but I actually get it now. More than ever do I understand. I used to hate that motto. When I first found out what it meant, I was like, are you fucking kidding me? I'm going to go back in time in a time machine, and I'm just going to knock, you know, King Fergus or whoever came up with that. I'm going to knock them right on their keister and say, what the fuck were you thinking, bro? Dulcius ex asperus, really? Right? But now, actually, I'm like, wow, I kind of love it. Because I went through what I've been through, and it is how sweet it is to have things go well in my life. And that also includes making money. To my haters who don't like me talking about that, I'm finally like not scrambling for the first time in my life. Truth seek and ye shall find. If I got halfway through Golden Dawn and done a few chants and give up on it, have I got problems? I do not know what you're referring to. Probably some specific Golden Dawn series of rituals. I'm not a big fan. I'm not against the Golden Dawn per se. I mean, they're Luciferian in my experience. And Crowley, if it's true that he harmed children, well, that's Malachian, and so I'm definitely not into that. But Golden Dawn, you know, Crowley just was a member. You know, McGregor Mathers and the other guy, whose name escapes me, founded the modern Golden Dawn. And, you know, David Bowie was the head of the OTO, which is a kind of offshoot of the Golden Dawn. As a general rule, you really shouldn't play with magic. And so I don't know. It really depends on what you did. And as long as you didn't take any packs from any spirits, then you're probably fine, although that doesn't mean you won't have problems and reverberations. But I would need to know specifics. And honestly, like that's a kind of thing where you would need to book a session with me, and I would delve into it. It just would take too much time and energy. I'm not even sure that I really want to be doing that kind of work anymore. Sorry, but it's, I don't know. It would really depend on the specifics of what you did. I kind of sense intuitively that probably you're okay. As long as you didn't like summon a being and take a pact, you're probably fine. What's the likelihood that Musk is implicated in this Diddy affair? He's on the subject and has been seen together with him in the past. I don't know. It would mean that my read on Musk is dramatically incorrect because I have him as a Luciferian rather than a Malachian, just based on a whole host of things. Just because the two of them have been seen together, it doesn't mean a lot. It's kind of a small group of people, the billionaires. And if I recall, Diddy is a billionaire. So, you know, there's also pictures of Musk with Ghislaine Maxwell, but there's also pictures of Trump with Epstein. You know what I mean? Like, just because you associate with some other wealthy person who has these bad things doesn't mean that you're in on it. Let me give you another example. I don't think Eckhart Tolle is a pedo. I would be absolutely shocked, beyond shocked to find that out. And yet he has been friends with Oprah. Why would he be friends with Oprah if he's such high vibration? Maybe he's trying to awaken her out of her darkness. You know, it's hard to say. But I am going to say, if Musk is implicated, I would wait on rushing to judgment on him. It could be a way of bringing Musk in to be under protective custody, or it could be like all kinds of things. Like, I think it's going to be very, very, very difficult to discern what's going on until the dust settles in about 3 or 4 years. I think until then, Sun Tzu said, all warfare is based on deception. And the Luciferians really, 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 really are big believers in that. And this is the biggest deception of all time, as they're about to run the table on the Malachians and make that unclear to the Malachians what's going on and just how challenging that task is. I would be very reticent to make any like determinations. I feel fine with, there's enough about Puff Daddy out there that he's a pedo, right? And sex trafficking, that I feel comfortable saying he's a Malachian. Musk, to my knowledge, I just don't know anything about Musk being a pedo. I haven't heard that. He got rid of pedophilia on Twitter, which is one of the main reasons that I think he's a Luciferian. It was like the first thing he did, pretty much, besides bring this sink in. Let this sink in. Yeah. Oh, that last turtle was clear. The rest of the video came together at a dizzying pace. I really loved how it turned out. Absolutely. Don't forget to show that like button some sweet mostly love, fam. Yeah. Okay. Is there any more? Okay. I'm going to go down to L and then I'll come back when we're done. Dirk, what are the karmic implications of manifesting a placeholder job that's now served its purpose by using unspecific solo sex magic? Well, I mean, it's not good. I have a little bit of minor magic like that I did at various times, including trying to manifest sex, which worked, that I'm not proud of. But you just probably need to work it off. I mean, probably some of the problems I've had in relationships might have been working out some of that magic. I would just be really careful to one of the reasons I like doing magic with angels is it puts guardrails on. The angels will just veto anything that's going to create more chaos in your life. Most other forms of magic, like chaos magic, which that's another form of magic I've done a lot of, like creating chaos magic style sigils, like Grant Morrison talks about. That's who I learned it from, the Grant Morrison 1999 disinfo speech, which is just rad. And Morrison's definitely a Lucy. I don't mean that he worships Lucifer. I just mean that that's his vibration. I find that other guy that Grant Morrison fought against, Alan Moore, I find him to be a lot more suspect. I've heard he said some stuff about kids that's suspect and questionable. I would just say, as a general rule, like, the nice thing about angelic magic is they put up the guardrails and they veto anything that might cause disharmony, but other forms of magic don't have those guardrails. And so you get what you want, but what you want might not be what you need, and what you want might actually be bad for you. Like, if you are a heroin addict and you want more heroin, yes, you really want that heroin, but is it really good for you? Right? So I would just say, if you've done other forms of magic in the past, I would back off of that. If you've taken pacts, demonic pacts in particular, that's a completely different ball of wax, and that's insanely difficult to untangle, and I simply will not do it anymore. I tried for 2 years to do it with someone who got really, really deep, 3 years actually, almost. Is that right? Over 2 years, who had gone really deep into black magic, tons of pacts and empowerments and all this kind of stuff, and just like kind of destroyed their mind, and I feel for that person, and I hope he does well in life, but I just actually realized I couldn't work with him anymore because the black magic had got to his mind too much. He wasn't particularly stable probably beforehand, and then the black magic just made it worse. So just don't take pacts, whatever you do. And if you do take pacts, well, you have to figure out a way to release those and unbind yourself from those, and it's not easy. Did some work in Glastonbury, Avebury, England last year. When I was down there, it felt like we were walking the path of the Grail. Mary Magdalene is depicted. Mary Magdalene in depicted is depicted as birthing. I assume that means. Yeah, she may have been pregnant one last time. My understanding is they had a daughter named Sarah, I want to say, Yeshua and Mary Magdalene, but they might have had more than one. They might have had the daughter that was already born and then another child that was, a bun in the oven, and she made her way up to Avebury and Glastonbury area. I do something along those lines feels true to me. I don't know exactly, but yeah, that's awesome. I love the Avebury ring. Amazing. The Avebury ring, which is the largest stone circle, I think, in Europe, but certainly in England. There might be a bigger one in Brittany, in like the north of France, but there's that one gigantic one there as well. But I think the Avebury ring is the biggest. It's certainly the biggest in England. Dragon said, I was wondering if the dragons and the seraphim were linked. That's one of the things where I disagree with others. There's no... In my experience, I do not experience the seraphim as having any reptilian or draconic qualities whatsoever. Celestial fire, yes. But they appear to me as beautiful humans. The main one I work with is a female. And she is astonishingly beautiful. And she has 6 wings. And on the edges of the wings are eyes, and then she's surrounded quite often by the alabaster flame of the Most High, like celestial fire, like blue and white fire, and sometimes she even is crackling with like celestial lightning and celestial plasmas like around her. They're insanely high energy, to put it mildly, but I don't perceive, at no point have I perceived them as being reptilian in any way. So I don't know where that came in. And it was one of the descriptions of the angels that I found to be completely incorrect. Also, I've never heard or read, but maybe someplace, there's a hint that another very famous magician knows this based on something he put on one of his books, but the form of the dominions was in some ways the most shocking to me, because it is an ancient world being symbol, but I did not expect it at all. And so I find that the cherubim and the ophanum or thrones exactly match their descriptions. The ophanum are the 3 concentric rings that spin within each other, and around the edges of those rings are eyes, and then they're surrounded by celestial fire and celestial lightning very often, and they're incredibly powerful. Again, I'm going to drop the 9 choirs video later this week where I go into a lot of this. And then the cherubim have the 4 different faces. They have Aquarius, the man, and then on the right side, they have ancient form Scorpio, the eagle, and then Taurus, the bull, and then on the back, they have Leo, the lion. They have the 4 fixed signs, and they have 4 wings. Oh, wait, I'm gonna go with L because L has them in order. Have you read about Chris Bledsoe and the lady? Any thoughts? No, I have not. So I do not have any thoughts on that because I do not know it. Norse Gale, will we see justice for the Needlecraft, or will it be lost in the turbulence to come? Limited. The Luciferians were like way up in that. They were way up in that. They built those roads, right, to make a play on the Dave Chappelle thing about LGBTQ, where he talks about white gay men. We built these roads, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, the Lucy's were balls deep in that operation. And that's the tricky one for them. That's the real tricky one for them to distance themselves from, because they were so involved in the planning of it and the execution, every aspect of it. They also were the ones that put out the saline. The vast majority of the saline, I think, came from the Lucy's. I think some of it, they talked the Malachians into it because they said, hey, look, if everyone just dies right away, that's not going to work. So we're going to have to not do it. And we should preserve your voting base, which happened to nest with the Luciferians' more eugenical approach of they wanted to keep the more talented, people on the coasts, you know, from the point of view of the cold-hearted Luciferians. And I'm not saying that there aren't incredibly talented people in the Midwest or South. One of my very best friends, he's shout out to you, big guy. One of my very best friends now is a man named Nick, and he's from the Midwest. Brilliant man. The Lucies would love to be able to recruit him because he is just brimming with talent. So there's people who are extremely talented in the Midwest and South, but if you look at standard deviation IQ and you see where IQ and talent and wealth clusters, it's mostly on the coast of the United States, mostly on the East and West Coast, right? Or maybe the coast like the Texas coast, Florida, right? You know, Panhandle. And but the South and Midwest is where the really, really bad ones went primarily. And I don't think it's an accident. I think that they targeted that in that way, unfortunately. Okay, so let's see. Interesting. Someone else had another question down below. I'm just seeing if there's anything I want to. I'll put that up. Get those likes up. Could you explain your view on angels? Yeah, I already did that. Got the Aztecs. Yeah, very cool. Yeah. Hey, what's up, Kiki? I don't think I've seen you comment before. How does one determine where this? Yeah, okay, we already did that. Yeah, the ruling energy is definitely changing the Ichigo cycle. Okay, I think that most of these, I'm just looking to see if there's any interesting comments. Oh, yeah, okay. Can't wait to watch the first half later. Yeah, good to see you, Dirk. I'm just looking to see. Okay. It looks like most of these have been addressed. Oh, Mary Magdalene is depicted as birthing dragons. Oh, that was all part of one question. Interesting. Yeah. Well, that's so interesting because of some symbolism I've been learning about in regards to Enki. And I feel like Enki and Lucifer are connected. So birthing dragons. Huh. I mean, the dragon is like the dragon, but especially the winged serpent is actually a Most High symbol, whereas the snake, it seems to me, is a more Luciferian symbol. And then the eagle / Scorpio is the symbol of Moloch, right, to some degree. And in the ancient world, the eagle was often depicted in connection with Enlil, you know, who's also Yahweh, Jehovah, and in my opinion, Moloch, right? And when you combine an eagle and a snake, you get a feathered serpent that flies. And so it's a transcending of those two is the feathered serpent, like Quetzalcoatl. So dragons are very similar to Quetzalcoatl. So it's possible that a dragon was being used symbolically here to symbolize more the feathered serpent, which is a transcending of the serpent is on the ground, right? But the dragon soars in the air. So it's beyond the Luciferian mentality. It's into the Most High. It's funny because I'm born near the dragon. So I've always loved dragons. Alrighty, let's go to the end here. And then B is quite an interesting symbol to have claims to. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and then someone just said, software engineer without a proper job going 2 years now. Resources, what's a resource? I feel you, brother. I hope you're able to find something soon. But in the meantime, just do the inner work. It's actually more important because you can have all the resources in the world. If you don't do the inner work, like you'll attract bad situations to you. Let me go to P. Scott said, is the demise of the Royals linked with the Sicari reptilians being removed from the planet? So interesting. Sicari, can you elaborate on that word? So the reptilians did leave. That I do know. They left when these so here's what I saw, and this is wacky. So whenever I get into exopolitics stuff, it doesn't fall within the framework of the rest of the stuff I talk about in this channel, but I'll just share what I saw anyway. I had a very intense vision that was shown to me by Spirit. And there was this huge ship that had appeared over our planet about 20 something years ago, right? So around the time of 9/11. And this gigantic ship, which was basically like the width of the Earth, right? So big, right? It's a flying planet essentially. And there was this race of hyper predator, sort of like slightly parasitical beings, and they were doing some kind of harvesting of the spiritual energy here on the Earth. And when they came, there's the normal reptilians everyone talks about, and then this is why I'm wondering if this is what you mean by Sakara reptilians. It's very interesting. But there's this other group of reptilians who this weird apex predator species is very biomechanical, but they mostly look like these giant flesh blobs. I don't know how to describe it better than that. They look like these giants. They're very fleshy, but inside all that fleshiness, there's tons of biomechanical upgrades. And so a schism appeared millions of years ago within the reptilians, where some of them had encountered these beings I'm describing, and they wished to emulate them. And so they became kind of cyborg reptilians. And something about that made them go completely insane. Like, even by reptilian standards, they were completely off the chain, and they became like sort of jackals then that would follow around with this apex predator, would squeeze the planet. And then the planet would be in complete shambles after these apex predators had squeezed the planet of like spiritual energy. And then these jackal type cyborg reptilians would go around and just sort of clean up the scraps. And so those beings also appeared. And these awful, awful reptilians that are much worse than the run-of-the-mill reptilians, which are not always great. It depends on those reptilians. The regular reptilians are much more, they're like us. They're free will creatures. They have their own culture, kind of the warrior caste. They have a caste system. The warrior caste is quite nasty, and the business caste is quite nasty. But there's also like priest or spiritual caste and a scientific caste. And the scientific caste is just like our scientists. They're everything from Mengele to awesome curing cancer doctors, right? Scientists. And then, and that's true. Like some of their business ones are reasonable. Some of their business ones are evil. Some of their military ones are somewhat reasonable, but most of them are like extremely aggressive and don't want to deal with them. And then the spiritual ones are a similar way, because they're a free will species. They're much like us. They're all the shades from light to dark and everything in between. But these cyborg ones they're insane, and they're all evil and just insane. And so when these big aliens arrived, the regular reptilians got off the planet, because even those cyborg ones are also hostile to the regular reptilians. They're just insane. And so then these giant, what looked like gigantic bronze eyes appeared. And whatever this apex predator species is it's able to dominate in our galaxy. But whatever these gigantic bronze eye ships that I saw, they are intergalactic. And that species then scared off that gigantic ship that was doing all this like really intense mind control on us, among other things. And they drove that ship off in like 2021. The summer of 2021, that mega ship left that had been here for like 25 or 30 years, and they were doing crazy mind control stuff. So I don't know. That's a super interesting question. And that's my extremely weird answer to it. I don't normally talk a lot about alien stuff on this channel. I'm not super duper interested in it, because the drama that's happening on our planet right now is almost exclusively about this consciousness yuga shift, and the aliens aren't going to be able to, they're being prevented from influencing it too much one way or the other. They're definitely hanging out, and some of them are here simply to observe this process in us and study it. And so, yeah, that's my answer. P. Scott said, thanks, Ian. Okay, great. Well, it's been 2 hours. That seems like a pretty good place to put a bow on it. Yeah, I'm going to wait till 2 minutes. It's 2 hours, 2 minutes. So that's 1 more minute. So if you have a super quick question, I'll answer it. And if not, then we'll just kill a little bit of time so I can do my OCD, and I'm seeing if there's anything else. Once that last hurdle came out, it was clear the rest of the intro video came together at dizzying pace. I really love how it turned out. Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing. It was amazing, and I'm super excited to share that with everyone on the 28th. I think I've gone through everything. And so let's see, is there anything else? Yeah, check out Krista Herring. She's fantastic. I don't know if there's a place, Brent, where your work can be viewed, but Brent Noir is awesome. And I'm just waiting for another few seconds. I have OCD about palindromes. Here's a good one. Thanks for answering the questions. Thanks so much. And then look forward to that next Angel video. Yeah, I'm excited. All right, see you guys. Have a good one. Bye.